Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Maritime Gateway Digital Dialogue, wherein we bring in business leaders week after week to share perspectives, the latest happening in the industry. Today, we have the pleasure of having Mr. Ritesh S Ramakrishnan, Joint Managing Director of Transworld Group with us. Welcome, sir. It is nice to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Ram Prasad ji, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to chat with you. Always look forward to it.
My pleasure. I have a few questions. Now we are in the month of June. We have passed Q1 and Q2. Between Q1 and Q2, there's a vast change. So how it has been both the quarters, Q1 and Q2? Can you explain a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, vast change, you're putting it very lightly. I think there's a whole world of things that have happened from the beginning of the year to now. In fact, I was talking to somebody yesterday. It's almost unrecognizable, the things we were talking about in January to the things we're talking about today. And this is something that is, I guess, once in a lifetime. You've had, I would probably liken it to world wars that happened in the past. And this is something similar where you're probably going to have an entire generation that looks at things differently, that will be forced to look at things differently and think about things in a new way and a different way as well. So I think that's the kind of scenario that, or those are the cards that we've been dealt with, not only as an industry, I think the world itself, that then thanks to the issues related to the coronavirus and COVID-19. So if you look at our business particularly, I think the first part of the year, if you were to look at Jan, Feb and March, were actually reasonably good. The freight rates, if I were to start off there, held up in most sectors, with a few exceptions, of course. But I think by and large, I would say the freight rates held up. The overall volumes, the flows across different businesses, different verticals, different geographies also were actually all positive. So it was almost, it was a situation where you could say it was almost too good to be true, where you had a lot of things looking upwards, when more often than not in our industry, if you have one thing looking upwards, you're thankful and you move on. So I think it was at that point of time, I think there was a lot of positive things going on, and we were quite optimistic. And in fact, we did have our fair share of growth plans charted out, as we tend to do every year, and take stock of the situation and start planning for the next financial year. So that was the first part of the year, and then of course we got into the issues related with the coronavirus. So I think to be very honest, if anybody tells you that they were well prepared for it or they found a way to deal with it from day one, I think I would take that with a pinch of salt. And like everybody else, I think we were the same, where whatever you think you have planned and you have your disaster recovery plans and everything charted out and planned out. But at the end of the day, when something like this hits you, it does impact you in many ways. And I'll try and split this up in two ways. One is the direct impact that we faced, and two is more on how we try to deal with it and what we did to kind of work around some of the things. So the direct impact, of course, like everybody else, huge drop in business, huge drop in volume. I think we, thanks to lockdowns occurring in different countries. So for us, because we have the network in the Middle East, India, Southeast Asia, US, so it was actually almost one after the other, where we had different countries going into lockdown. And then therefore we felt the impact kind of one after the other and not just concentrated in one area. That being said, India forms a good 60% of our business starts and ends in India. So obviously when Prime Minister Modi decided to do a nationwide lockdown, there was an immediate impact felt on all our businesses significantly in India. Somewhere to the extent of we were probably more than 50-60% down in terms of volumes almost overnight. That is the extent of the impact that we faced. Having said that, I think there was a call I remember we had with the chairman and with a couple of others, and then the larger team, where we did kind of say, like, listen, these are the facts. This is what we have to deal with. Now it's entirely up to us how we deal with it and how we choose to deal with it. Whether we sit down and say, oh God, Corona has happened, we don't know what to do, or as we always have in the past, find a way to get up. B, go back to your customers, talk to your customers, start working on helping them again. Forget, we can manage ourselves, we have to help our customers, and see what else can we do that we're today not doing for our customers and as an organization. So one of the biggest things we've done, and maybe if there's an opportunity later, I'd like to speak about that as well. But we launched a technology initiative about 2 years ago now in June. Actually, on the 20th of June, it completed 2 years. It was a major project launch with Oracle. And in fact, that project now we've started going live across lots of businesses and have already gone live. And I would say that along with the digital mindset that we've had as an organization, say in the last, or the shift towards a more digital mindset in the last couple of years, I think is what helped us. We had zero downtime. From the day of lockdown to now, people were seamlessly operating in a work from home scenario. Every customer was spoken to, every requirement was dealt with, documents were issued, documents were passed, so much so that, in today's scenario, we have EDOs, EBLs, then we've had for some time now WhatsApp-based information delivery system. We've got our portals to take bookings. We're on the verge of integrating them with payment gateways. So what this has done, in a sense, is challenged us to complete our digital initiative and then kind of push us towards being more and more a digitally enabled logistics and shipping company. So I think that's the plus side of it. The negative side, like I said, of course, there were challenges, but I think we've seen the worst. I believe we've seen the bottom, and we're slowly starting to see some positive signs in all our trading areas. So okay. That's my, sorry, rather long answer, but I thought I'd just summarize.
You have covered both the quarters and then the challenges, as well as how the digital initiative actually helped us. We'll dwell a little bit more on that. But coming to the modes of transport, during the lockdown, road movement has disrupted greatly, and we have seen some of the cargo shifting to rail as well. So does this anyway benefit coastal movement as one of the mode of transport? Is there a logic to it?
Yeah, I think the coastal, see this issue of using India's long coastline as a trade route has been something that has been discussed for years and years and years. And to be honest, I think till very recently, it was probably a chicken and egg situation where as coastal operators, we would have liked to believe that we have all the answers to everybody's problems. But perhaps we did not have the network in place then. But I think if you look at the last probably half a decade, I think it's more, I think we have spent a lot of time and efforts to create and build a network. And today it's not only us as an overall trade, if I was to look at it, I think there is sufficient tonnage and sufficient network that's been created by a few of us that are in the marketplace today. So it's not even that that becomes a shortfall. So then you would look at what are the triggers, to answer your question, what could have been the triggers to make the shift or to make it a more viable mode. Again, if I was to step back and answer it, I think the first thing is we all as a trade body or as a cargo owner, whether you're talking about the chemicals, you're talking about the fertilizers, you're talking about tiles, whatever it is, and even the government of India and different state governments, do we first realize and believe that there is an advantage to be had by using a natural God-gifted highway? I think as a country and as all these trade bodies and things that I just mentioned, are we in a position somewhere to say that, yeah, it does make sense because it is actually cheaper. Point to point, it's 50 to 60% cheaper depending on what point it is. You are also talking about fixed transit times. You're talking about less pollution on the roads. You're talking about less pilferage. You're talking about having an ability to control and plan your supply chain really, really well. Which, with due respect to the road sector, considering that is the largest mode of transport today, I think you still find these challenges in spite of all the efforts, in spite of the Bharatmala and road building and all of that. I think you still find some of these fundamental challenges that exist. Of course, coastal shipping is not one size fit all. It's not something that may fit immediately for every and all industry. But in our experience, and especially during the lockdown, our traditional commodities, which was construction and building materials, actually had their own challenges, and in fact, even today haven't recovered. But our volumes have in fact shot up, and we have carried a whole bunch of new commodities that erstwhile were never moving by sea, including I think several Government of India companies as well. So perhaps there is definitely a shift happening, and people are realizing. So I guess maybe I answered my own question, but maybe that bit of, okay, there is an option. Yes, it does make sense. Yes, there is somebody that can do it for us. Yes, so maybe those boxes are being ticked somewhere.
Okay.
And for us, I think it's only the thesis that we held a long time ago. I guess this kind of gives the validation to that, to say that there is a viable mode, and please come in and use it. And I guess whoever is watching this, please do, and not necessarily us. There are a lot of people in the marketplace. I think it's a very viable mode for the entire country to look at to move goods for the country.
Okay. When you come to transshipment, what was the scenario like during COVID situation?
Sure. So I think as far as transshipment goes, again, so we operate as feeder operators and coastal operators largely. Probably, if you were to look at it, it'll be 4 areas, 4 hubs. So we have the Dubai hub, and I'll move eastwards kind of. Then we have, of course, India. So I'll just take India as a hub. We have Colombo as the other hub, and Singapore as the other hub. So we're talking about Singapore Port Klang. So we're talking about these 4 being our operational hubs. Globally, and I think thanks to the challenges which I kind of touched on and everybody's aware of, there was a huge downsizing, so to speak, in terms of services and sailings offered by the shipping lines. I think all shipping lines and global trade all over definitely shrunk. So logically, I think the cascading effect was felt on trade all over the place. So as you have major shipping lines in different trunk routes reducing their capacities, obviously the rollover will happen on feeder operators like us. And transshipment, if you take especially India, along with some of the other places, I think to different degrees or to varying degrees, there was definitely an impact on the volumes there as well. Again, having said that, 2 things. One is I think we've bottomed out. I think a few areas of optimism I think definitely exist, where we're seeing spurts of volume happening again from the month of June. And secondly, I think just our ethos as a feeder operator in this case, I think flexibility is the key. So for us, there was an impact, but I think because we, as a feeder operator, again, multiple buckets, right? As a ship owner in different parts where we operate, it definitely hurt and it continues to hurt. Charter hires are, significantly hampered. But as a feeder operator, if I was to look at it, I was able to be very flexible in my costs. I was able to either upsize, downsize, off-hire ships wherever required, and therefore provide an even more cost-effective solution for my customers. So whether they are the MLO customers or the NVOCC customers, across sectors where we operate, we were able to have this flexibility in what we do. So again, there was definitely volume-related challenges. Transshipment itself had volume reduction, but overall basis, I think we were able to manage it, and also I'm sure that going forward we'll start to see a small recovery in at least 1 or 2 places.
Leaving business aside for a while, let's talk about human resources.
Sure.
Crew change has been one of the biggest challenge the industry was talking about, and there are a lot of incident issues where they were stuck and then couldn't be unloaded. So as you are a ship owner yourself, so how did you manage? What are the issues and how did you manage to resolve this?
So that's actually a great question, because if you ask me, the single biggest challenge that we faced, or if you would ask me personally, the single biggest challenge that I faced, or the single biggest thing that kept me awake at night during the first or the initial part of the COVID and the lockdowns, was not the business volumes falling, was not anything else, but the fact that I had on board a set of my own people that, for I guess variety of different reasons, were really struggling to either sign off or sign on. For us as a ship owner, our seagoing staff, in fact, are our backbone, right? So they play a huge part in whatever we do. So in fact, we had a kind of town hall session with a lot of them last week where I participated, and it was so heartening to see the commitment that all of them showed in these tough times. So I think this was probably the biggest challenge that we had, because you had issues where I think the government initially took some time to understand the gravity of the situation. But I must say that the Honorable Shipping Minister, bodies like INSA, I think all of them, the DG Shipping Office, the DG himself, I think everybody played a very, very important role in ensuring that we could at least try and find solutions for this. Initially, yes, there was a lot of confusion. Sign-offs were not able to happen. Sign-ons were not able to happen. But there was a very, very proactive approach taken by all these by these bodies and several other bodies and individuals that, of course, I've missed mentioning. But I think that was very, very heartening to see. The other large issue, even though it was being driven through the Shipping Ministry and by the Honorable Minister himself, I think each state ended up having their own set of rules and regulations. So you had in Kerala, you had one set of rules for sign-off, sign-on, quarantine days, pre-quarantine in certain areas. And you had a different set in Maharashtra, and you had a different set in Gujarat. And a fourth set in Andhra or Telangana as well. So this became a bit of a challenge. Even though I think people who work on ships are defined as essential workers. So even though that definition exists, but somewhere I guess there was they say, slip between the cup and the lip. So I think that happened for some amount of time. But having said that, I think even this has settled down in the last couple of weeks, 3 weeks. Things have not yet gone back to normal. I would say it's still very, very challenging, very difficult. But at least different authorities, different governments, different local police are all at least realizing that they need to help and kind of cooperate as best as possible. So we have been able to do a fair share of sign-offs and sign-ons for our own ships. We actually have a fairly active third-party shipping agency business as well, where we've done, in fact, a fairly sizable amount of crew sign-on, sign-off in June. So I think it's also back to more or less being normal. But like I said, I think the challenges still exist. Like we were talking in the town hall to a chief engineer of ours. He signed off in Tuticorin and he lives in Tuticorin. But he has not yet been able to go to his house because the rules say that 14 days of confinement, but not at home in this particular case. And then he had some other challenges. So those are the small things that I think we still deal with. But I guess it's for the better. I think as long as people can sign off and sign on, these are all small things. In the larger scheme of things, these are smaller issues that can be dealt with, I'm pretty sure.
Globally, though COVID-19 has a great impact on businesses, the way we live, the way we conduct our businesses, some of the experts were talking about the good things that happen to our industry. I mean, logistics have come onto the forefront that every government, every individual has realized the importance of supply chain and logistics. It is a good thing that happened. So in that background, and this is a black swan event, and there is no preparedness, like you said, there is no SOP for anybody to follow. Ministry of Commerce is coming up with a national logistics policy. The draft is ready. I believe the secretary has been asking some of the suggestions from the industry. So, as a large operator with the different verticals, do you have any suggestions? And especially in the post-COVID scenario, what are the changes you want to see in policy?
So I think again something that, like, we've had a lot of laws passed in India in the last maybe half a decade. I think this is another great concept that is long overdue. If you were to, and again I mean this with no disrespect at all, in the past I think we were not, you can say, logistics industry, but it was a very loose word. Who formed a part of the industry, what qualified him, her, or the organization to be an industry player? Were there minimum standards? Were there health and safety related things in place? Were there systems in place? I think these are all things, if India really wants, and if we as a nation really wants to move away from the the Jugadu mindset to really a real world dominant force in this case. I think these are all things that are long overdue, and this policy that's coming up as well is definitely one of them. Because one, I think the biggest thing that it's doing is defining the clear rule. What is logistics, or what is the industry? Who is part of the industry? So I think that itself is a big recognition that, listen, after all this while, we finally got one nodal, at least a document, to say that this is a policy or this is a framework that we are trying to put together. So I think that, firstly, I think that is a huge welcome step and a huge shot in the arm for the entire industry. Two, if you were to look at improvement or ways of improvement, I think the government has been, again, extremely proactive in getting, like you rightly said, getting everybody's feedback. There have been multiple rounds of discussions, multiple rounds of meetings, to really try and get and take into account everybody's views. So it's not a one-sided or one-way heavy document. But if I was to look at, and I think again the challenge that India faces every once in a while, I think ideas are great, but somewhere the implementation gets a little muddled. So I think even in this case, my only request would be, I think a policy is great, but I think, can we also, along with this, once it's finalized, I think draw out a national logistics plan? Because I think a policy is to me, how I see it, and this would be just a personal view, is a framework document. Now, between the framework document and how it actually cascades to whatever XYZ things on the ground, I think there needs to be a lot of filling in the gaps or filling in the blanks there. So if we were, I think, in a position to first freeze and finalize the framework, my only request would be that get, again, maybe the same people who help frame it, or get industry involved like you have, get different parts of the government involved like you have, but actually start filling in the blanks piece by piece. Because I think if we're able to do it now, and the momentum in which the policy has been drawn up, been spoken about, been discussed, and if we get able to take that same momentum forward and really start filling in these blanks, I think then you'll start to see a real sense of oneness, happening in this. Like, if you were to look at, I think Korea has it, if I'm not mistaken, maybe another country, where you actually have a clear framework in terms of, if you are a trucking company, what is your minimum? What are you? Are you a one truck owner? If you're a one truck, you have to have at least XYZ things in terms of insurance, in terms of, so what this does is professionalize the entire ecosystem. It's not just our industry, right? What are we doing? We're only serving trade. Now, if we do business with a couple of large chemical companies, for example, now they have very clearly spelled out health and safety norms. Now, because we have the experience of working with them in the Middle East, in Saudi, we work with them in UAE, we work with them in India, the same company, for example, we are able to bring in some of the best practices to whatever business we're doing for them, whether it's the tanks, the dry containers, or the road transport, and similar to even warehousing, what we do in the UAE. Whereas I think it's not the same across the industry. So I think we have to all realize that there has to be a sea change in how the industry looks at itself. It cannot just be, like I said, the Jugadu way. We are professionals. It's a professional industry. There is a set of requirements that we have to do to serve our customer. I think it's high time that we also take the onus. So I believe the whole logistics policy, the entire framework and the line of thinking of the government, I think it comes into this. And it's not dissimilar from your GST, from your e-way bill. I think all of it kind of comes in the same bucket to try and put some framework or put some guidelines to the larger industry so that everybody can benefit, the larger ecosystem can benefit. So I think that's how I look at it. So in terms of requests, I think it's going very well. It's a great initiative, but perhaps start rolling out an actual next level document in terms of how and what things should be done.
In fact, during lockdown, every organization, every institution suddenly realized the need for digitalization, and there was a mad rush to get onto digital initiatives. And people said that actually this scenario is accelerating digitalization. But you, in 2018, you started this digital initiative, and a little while ago you were mentioning that you are seeing the results and fruits of it. So what do you think the future scenario, how things are going to be, and how does it help all the stakeholders, customers? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so I think I've mentioned this story before, and I enjoy saying the story because I actually this is our entire philosophy, our entire funda, thought process, whatever you want to call it, is actually can be articulated very well with this story. It's a true story, but I'll admit I may be adding a little bit of extra masala here and there. But by and large, it's a true story. So I live when I'm in Bombay, I am in the same building as my grandmother, who is in her early 80s. Mm-hmm. And she lives with her mother, so my great-grandmother, who is about 96 or 97 as we speak. So this happened some time ago, and in true conversation. I'll try translating in English. I may go into Tamil and I'll switch it back to English just to give the nuance of the story. So I was there one evening and I go very often. So whenever I'm in Bombay, I end up, before I leave for the office, I go and say hi in the morning and come back in the evening also. I come and just say hi, have a cup of coffee, gossip a little bit, and then go back to my house. So it was a very interesting conversation where my grandmother had her phone and she was looking at whatever she was reading, and then my great grandmother came and said, let's eat. Can we eat something? What about dinner? So I was also there. So I said, okay, I'll figure it out. Tell me what you want. Let me sort it out. The same speed, my grandmother, just kind of took her phone, and as she was about to open, my great grandmother says, "Anda app tora," means open that app. And I'm wondering, what is she talking about? This is my 97-year-old great grandmother, that time maybe 95, 94, talking to my grandmother. I said, what are you talking about? Then she said, "Illa rend app, there are two apps." And I'm wondering, what is this conversation going on? My great grandmother reminded my grandmother to open, I think it was Swiggy, to go to a particular restaurant and to order food. And then she is asking her daughter, have you paid with, have you linked your card and paid or not? Have you paid with your, using whatever, Google, whatever it's called, one of those things. And I was in shock because I am sitting here and it was one of those, long days in the office. You come back and then this, and you're sometimes in your own world. And then I heard this conversation. I was like zapped. I said, what just happened? And then I asked my grandmother, I said, what is this? Yeah, it's so easy. You don't know. Here, one button order, one button check, and it's already paid for. And then they come and deliver it. She's explaining this to me. So then it kind of struck me, what are they doing? It's logistics. In a sense, it's a logistics supply chain process that is happening through an app. In this case, it's food delivery. Why is it that our industry is so traditional and refuses to give access to the information and refuses to give timely, accurate data and make it easy for people? Why is it always that information is sometimes not shared in time or not shared correctly or whatever? So this was the kind of funda that or eureka moment that kind of happened a few years ago. And then we of course went back and we had a chat with the team. We had a chat with the entire senior management team, and we started the process of looking at where we are digitally. back then we had a legacy system built on Oracle, but it was a legacy system built in-house, multiple parts. Each vertical had a different piece of the software. No one spoke to each other. It was a very typical in-house ERP kind of, build as you go kind of model. So one of the first things we did, and we took a call, was to bring in somebody not from our industry to head our IT, to head our technology piece. So we got a gentleman in who had nothing to do with the shipping industry or logistics industry. He was from a manufacturing background, but this guy, and he's with us and driving the initiative now, had such a different way of looking at things. And we narrowed down and said, first we need to bring somebody like this on board. As we started, we went through the entire process of identifying where we are, what we would like to do, where we need to move. And that itself took us about a year, where we had several rounds of discussions with Oracles, with SAP, Microsoft, with XYZ, indigenous companies, all to try and understand how, at the end of the day, what can we do to make our customers' life easier. That is the fundamental point. And then we built and built and built backwards, and we realized that the best possible solution that we can do is something that we can work with Oracle. Yeah. Of course, it was a crazy project. It is still a crazy project because the length and breadth of the businesses that we have essentially gone live on almost, except the NVOCC business, which is going live by August or September. We have actually gone live on all our businesses. Financially, everything is live. Operationally, except the NVO business, everything is live, and this is done in exactly 2 years. So the scale of it and the kind of efforts and the time and the costs behind it, I think we took a conscious decision to do all of this to ensure that we are ahead of the game. So today, when you have, if you were to take the NVO or the container side of the business, even though we have not gone live on the ERP, we have still built technology on top. Our entire coastal booking, our entire coastal and NVO, regional NVO platform can all be done through our app. Mm-hmm. All the information flow is through WhatsApp, if the desire is through that, or it continues through the app or the portal. Every single aspect of it, from EDOs to EBLs, all of it is now available and accessible. So the entire process, which was very much an offline process, has now transformed into an online process. For our global freight forwarding businesses, which we have now, the US entity is going live this week, next week, wherein our entire network, any rate, anything, at the click of a button, a customer will be able to get access to all the information, get access to whatever they need, get access to, even, like I said, we're even working with different payment gateways in due course that will come up. So what we have done is basically, in an ideal world, made our very, very unnecessarily complex industry like a Zomato or a Swiggy. So my grandmother can actually finally book a container in coastal if she wants, or book a forwarding container from the US to India or wherever it is. I think that's the endeavor. So it's a fairly long story, but what I'm trying to get to is, again, it's something that the industry, I think we have to take a conscious effort. In today's age, the end user is also changing, and therefore the requirements of having these things like, what is like track and trace? It's nothing great. It's not something that you should say, wow, I have track and trace. That is, in fact, today it should be a basic requirement. So I think we are also seeing that fundamentally the demographics are changing with our customers. The expectations in terms of digital technologies and tools are also changing as far as they are concerned. So I think this has allowed us to definitely be, I think, ahead of the game. We are fully on cloud. We are the largest Oracle implementation in our industry, I think almost world over, is what they have told us. So these are all, I think, things that will hold us in good stead. But like you said, I think, like you asked, I think the industry itself, again, going back to the last question, the logistics policy, I think all of this is somewhere trying to prod everybody to say, can we step up? It's always easy to say that this is not there or that is not there, but I think let us also introspect. We did it as an organization. We took a very long, hard look at ourselves, introspected, and came up with the realization, and listen, this is something we are well short of. Therefore, we decided to work on it, and now we've reached a reasonable level. And of course, there's a lots more to go. So I think that's the way I would look at technology, the role of technology in this whole thing.
Yeah, excellent. But that brings me an additional question. these digital solutions cannot work in isolation, especially in our industry. So, I mean, there are a lot of agencies, including government agencies, involved with the movement of cargo. So, how well it is integrated, or how well other agencies can plug in, and the circle is complete for the customer interaction.
Yeah, so I think for us, so again, from an industry perspective, from a government perspective, we have to, I think, trust each other. That's the first and fundamental bottleneck that everybody faces. I may not trust my best friend who's operating a trucking company. He may not trust his best friend who's running a port, etc., etc., etc. And then the government is another, like you said, as part of many different aspects in the supply chain. So I think that is the first issue or the first challenge. I think if we're able to overcome that, then that bottleneck goes away, where you can start looking at ways of connecting with each other. See, for us, and now coming to our system and our technology, we have built it in a way that it's very easy to sit on top of, sync with, talk to any practical system available today. The key for us will be how easily it's able to integrate with something else. So we believe, we've also talking, where we're looking at doing a blockchain trial and setting one up with 2 or 3 other along the supply chain. So we have an entire chain done on a blockchain platform. So these are all things I think that will again vindicate what we're doing and how we're doing it. But you're right. I think fundamentally, if things don't talk to each other, then you might as well be back to square one. But again, this is what I'm saying. Mindset. If everybody says, yes, it makes sense, let's do it. Even if it's an investment, it makes a lot of sense. Then everybody will benefit. The logistics cost goes down. There'll be less bottlenecks. Trade becomes more efficient. Exports can increase. Arguably, even internally, cargo volumes can increase. I think everybody will be happier. I think it's just that first initial kind of kickstart that's needed.
Let's come back to business again.
Yes.
Now we are at the end of Unlock 1.0, and then slowly the manufacturing wheels are moving. So, what is your estimate that the market looks up, and then maybe exports go up, and in each of your businesses, what is the way forward? What do you see? What is in store for you?
So, the optimist in me will say that, of course, everything is going to go only up and up and up. But having said that, I think it's also important to be realistic to say that apart from COVID-related things, our business, wherever we are in trade, and trade patterns are called trade patterns because they follow a certain pattern. If you look at India, the monsoon period is traditionally a time where cargo slackness is there. The volumes are generally softer than what they are because of monsoon-related challenges within the Indian supply chain and Indian land side and rail and coastal, whatever it is. So that's one aspect of it. But if you were to discount that and say that, assume that was not there, I would say that the volumes are in fact across our businesses up in the month of June. In India, the coastal volume has significantly gone up in the month of June. We have done in the first 3 weeks of June, we probably did what we did in the last 5 weeks of the previous time period. The EXIM volume, both for reefers and the dry containers, have also gone up. Forwarding businesses, probably trade lanes, African volumes have gone up out of India. Out of India, US volumes have gone up significantly. Intra-Asia still seems to be a little slow. You look at from the Middle East to India, Indian subcontinent is also slightly slow. I think there have been some other regulatory issues and challenges there. But overall, I think we've seen a definite increase. And I think if you were to look at India having a good monsoon, which is what the forecast is, at least, and I think thus far it is kind of slowly starting and picking up. Probably you will see post all of this, you will continue to see an increase in volumes, is what we feel. But again, you're also now starting to see a trend of several places that are going into a second lockdown. The Maharashtra government just before we were speaking announced that it becomes July 31st. is the extension of the lockdown. You're talking about places in the US like Texas, Houston in Texas and Florida, where they're seeing a huge spike of cases and they want to go into a second lockdown. You're talking about London and the UK. So you may find that, unfortunately, you may find several countries and several trading areas may come into this issue of having a second lockdown. And if that happens, then again, obviously, you're going to have some impact on your volumes, which is to be expected. But if things stay the way they are, even though it's work from home and the new normal, I still believe that we've seen the worst, and it'll only go upwards from here. That's my slightly optimistic, but I think I'm fairly certain that it should not be as significant, even if it drops as it did at the beginning.
No, these are the times that we need to be very optimistic. On that note, we wish you all the best, and we want you to continue to do things with the same kind of passion, either pursuing your digital initiatives or coastal shipping or in all of your activities. We wish you all the best. Thank you for being with us this evening. I end this session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.